or a plugin, you have no control. You take the risk, it's your risk, but you have no control. So to illustrate, I'm going to talk about Flash's brain-dead cross-domain policy and the Adobe PDF plugin vulnerability that was released earlier this year, as well as the jar protocol handler vulnerability in Firefox that was released, I think, a week or two ago. The cross-domain XML. Take, for example, AJAX, XML HTTP request. You can't make an XML HTTP request across domains because that would be disaster for security, right? Let's say you have an XSRF protection on your website. Now, if I can make cross-domain requests from a malicious site, I can just fetch the content of your site, get your XSRF token, and defeat your XSRF protection. So you don't want cross-domain requests coming from malicious sites. However, in the case of api.flickr.com, for example, they expose services that are meant to be consumed by things like Flash plugins running on people's browsers. So if you know what you're doing, you can opt in and have a cross-domain.xml file in your web root. So if you go to api.flickr.com/crossdomain.xml, you'll get back a file that looks like the one in red, where the web server is saying, it's okay, allow people to make cross-domain requests to me. And in cases where you know what you're doing, that's okay. But the problem with Flash is, in the recent versions of Flash, you can place a cross-domain file anywhere. It doesn't have to be api.flickr.com/crossdomain.xml. It could be api.flickr.com/xyz/123/crossdomain.xml, and Flash will accept it. The problem that creates for application developers is when you create and write applications, you're not thinking about all this. You don't know that Adobe decided that cross-domain could be anywhere. Now it's your problem. And if your application, for example, allows people to upload and download XML files, you're screwed. So now you have to start thinking about common plugins and how browser features work and make sure your application is still fine. So just merely doing a code review is not enough anymore. The Adobe's PDF plugin is just a great example. Here you are spending thousands of dollars or euros doing assessments on your applications, and then here comes along Adobe and just screws up everything for you. In this case, the vulnerability found was in Reader 7.0.8 or earlier. All you need for cross-site scripting is if your server serves a PDF. If you have a PDF anywhere that somebody can download, you're susceptible to cross-site scripting thanks to Adobe. So let's assume you have the following link, your server at example.com/example.pdf. Now in my malicious site, say I construct a link like this pointing to your PDF, but after that I put in the number sign or hash sign, shift3, whatever you call it, and put in JavaScript after that. What will happen is, when somebody clicks on that link, the browser will download the PDF, spawn Adobe, just show you the PDF, and then Adobe will make the browser execute the JavaScript code in context of your domain. Therefore, there's cross-site scripting. The instance where it gets worse is if you're looking at your server logs, you don't see the stuff that comes after the PDF because that's for the client to process. You only see a get, for example, .pdf. The reason why this issue is important and interesting to me is because there's nothing you or I could do as application owners to fix this, besides stop serving PDF files. And people, when they install their laptops for the first time, they install Adobe. Who updates their Adobe plugins often? Similarly, the jar protocol handler vulnerability that was announced, I think, 2 weeks ago, also causes universal XSS. So if you have a URL like the following, jar:/HTTP, basically a pointer to a jar file. A jar file is really something like a zip file. And then you put an exclamation mark and actually refer to an HTML within the jar file. What will Firefox do? It will download the jar file, unzip it, take and execute the actual resource within the context of your domain. Sounds bad, but then when you think about it, it's not that bad. I mean, how many applications allow you to upload and download jar files, right? The situation where this gets really bad is, consider the case of a redirect, right? Google has a free redirect, which is bad in itself, but it makes the problem worse for Google. You have the redirect where groups.google.com/search history/URL, and then you give it any URL you want, and the Google server will redirect you to it, right? Now let's say I have a malicious server where I have the jar file with an HTML that does cross-site scripting, and somebody clicks on this link. What does Firefox do? It gets redirected, it downloads the jar file, executes the stuff in the jar file within the context of the person who redirected it. So what this basically means is Google today is suffering from universal cross-site scripting across the board until Firefox decides to fix this problem, which I think they've promised in the next release. So to wrap up, I think we in the application security community need to do a better job of understanding, presenting root causes of issues and their impacts, and the fact that data is really should be used to measure risk, not how many people use your applications. Threat modeling is a great solution in this situation, where threat modeling allows you to even tie your applications and think about where your risk really lies, and it visually sometimes illustrates that the risk really lies in the data, not in the application itself. Automated tools have their limitations, but I think they are useful too, and I think there's a lot of room for improvement with automated tools. Browser plugin vulnerabilities are important because even though as an application owner you might not be able to do anything about the risk, it's important to measure and understand what the risk is. So with that said, I think application security will continue to be the layer where we'll see the most types of attacks, and so I think there are a lot of interesting things to come. So with that, I'd open up to any questions. Cool, thank you.